All right, so the webinar today will be titled Threat Intelligence, Cybersecurity in the Cloud, as introduced by Dr. Anton. So first things first, just want to say thank you and a very good afternoon. Hope everyone is well today. As introduced by Dr. Anton, my name is Christopher, you can call me Chris. And I'll be sharing with you on this topic, all right, and this very cloud computing chapter over here. Now, before we begin today's session, let me just take some time to just introduce myself and also my company briefly. I'm currently attached to Global ICT Training and Certification Private Limited. My role over there is a principal trainer. And in the past, I have dabbled with research domains such as operations research, meta-heuristic optimization algorithms. And currently, my interest lies with machine learning algorithms. All right. Now, just to share with you on our certification programs, at GICT, we have been a pioneer. And all this while, we have been positioning ourselves as an open source and vendor neutral training service provider. All right, so our courses, they are primarily offered in the region, and they are also offered via a collaboration with other authorized training partners in the region of Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Jordan. We offer 13 ICT programs that are fully endorsed and funded under the CITREP Plus scheme, and our core technology areas encompass domains in machine learning, cybersecurity, data science, blockchain, business analytics, cloud computing, as well as the Internet of Things, right? And here are some of the clientele whom we have worked in the past. And you might see some familiar brands over here. For example, we have Singtel, OCBC, DSTA, Crimson Logic, ST Engineering, and SNCS. And of course, these are just some of our clientele. And of course, we have actually worked with more companies beyond these few examples. All right. Now, coming into the topic of our webinar, so what you see over here is basically a screenshot of the live cyber threat map. All right, so this dashboard or this view basically illustrates the current cyber threats that are actually happening. All right, you can actually visit the website, right, pointed below, threatmap.checkpoint.com. And you could basically see the cyber attacks that are happening live right now. And of course, in this screenshot, you would see that, the cyber threats, the cyber threat that are currently happening is actually being launched from the United States, and it's targeting Malaysia at the moment, all right, our neighbor. Okay, and you can see that on average, all right, if you focus on the top left-hand side corner, you can see on average, we have about 80 million, all right, of daily attacks on an average basis. And that is an astonishing and astounding figure, all right? So if you're interested, you can take a screenshot of this and probably check it out later, all right? And of course, we want to discuss or address cloud security in this webinar, all right? Now, before we get to cloud security, we first need to understand cloud computing. All right, we need to understand what cloud computing is. And then after that, we will discuss about the various security measures that are associated with cloud computing. All right. Now, cloud computing over here, it's basically the delivery of hosted services. And the services that we are talking about over here include software, hardware, and storage over the internet. All right, so we are talking about these kind of services that are not hosted in-house in companies, but we're talking about services being delivered over the internet. All right, and basically this gives us the benefits of rapid deployment. It's very fast to get started, all right, to get up and running very quickly. It allows flexibility, all right, and basically it has low upfront cost and it has a scalability feature. So if your business, you're just starting out, you could basically scale it down. And when your business has reached its maturity, or you're coming from a mature organization, you could easily scale up over here. It's very easy. And these kind of features have made cloud computing virtually universal among organizations of all sizes, often as part of a hybrid or multi-cloud infrastructure architecture, for them to tap the best of the features that are offered by these cloud providers. Okay, now having an understanding of cloud computing, now cloud security basically refers to the technologies, policies, controls, and services that protect cloud data, which is basically the data that you are currently hosting with the provider, applications, and infrastructure from threats. All right, now in hardening the system securities, we need to know the following, which brings me to the current landscape of cloud computing over here. All right, so as you can see from this diagram is basically illustrating a 3-layer architecture for the fog cloud ecosystem. Now, as we move up the pyramid, we can note an increase in the following area. All right, reliability of connectivity, computing power, data longevity. All right, your data resides longer, data storage, and so on. Now, as we move down the pyramid, we can expect greater mobility, faster responsive time with our applications, and also its interactive capability and so on. All right, now in essence, what the fog nodes do over here is that they will receive data streams from devices in real time, and within the node, it will run processing applications for real-time control and analytics. It will provide some form of interim storage, which usually lasts for about 1 to 2 hours. And it will send periodic data summaries to the cloud. Now, the cloud, all right, which is at the apex of the pyramid, receives and aggregates data that's received from the fog and summarizes them. All right, and it performs analysis on these IoT data to basically reveal business insights. All right, and over here, the organization is ultimately responsible for the security of the data and transactions. Now, cloud vendors know that they must do their part in hardening or improving their cybersecurity aspect. But in the end, if a customer's data is compromised, the onus actually lies with the organization. All right, they will have to answer to that customer or basically pay a fine. Similarly, if an organization falls victim, and nowadays ransomware attack, it is very popular, and it is the organization that must pay the hacker. All right, that means that just because you are using cloud computing, all right, you don't have any responsibility, and the responsibility does not lie with you. No, you cannot let your guard down. All right. So as much as there are lots of features and capabilities that are offered by the cloud provider, it is actually the user's responsibility to tap into these features and basically to harden the system as well. Now, 2 common causes of data breaches in the cloud. Number 1, misconfigured access restrictions on storage resources. And 2, basically forgotten or improperly configured secure systems. All right, and these two aspects over here are responsibility of the organization, not the cloud vendor. All right, and naturally, of course, having an understanding of all these, you will notice that recently there is a rapid increase of employing white hat hackers, basically to assess the security aspects within an organization. All right. Now, cloud vendors, of course, they are working to increase security features and make it to be easily accessible for businesses. Okay. Now, cloud vendors over here, they have invested enormous resources in their own product security. All right. So if we're talking about Amazon, we have their Amazon Web Services. If we're talking about Microsoft, we have Microsoft Azure. And if we're talking about Google, we have Google Cloud Platform. You know, and these three generally the market leaders that you will hear very often. All right. And if you are currently subscribed to one of the services listed here, you can be rest assured that security has been one of their highest priority. All right. And of course, right now they have focused or turned their attention to helping their customers to improve their security as well. For example, you can see that for Google, in the case of Google, they actually offer a cloud security command center. All right. And this center basically acts as a scanner to look for vulnerabilities. All right. Much like, you deploy your antivirus to search for vulnerability. So it follows after the same concept. And both Amazon and Microsoft have actually built applications and infrastructures to help to this end. Okay. So, with this kind of abstraction, it's actually very easy for you to configure, all right, to basically improve the security of your applications. All right. So each time, whenever you're in doubt about how well you're securing the access and data on your end, you could always reach out to your cloud vendor and seek their help. All right. Now, thirdly, cloud computing could improve security. Sometimes cloud computing offers a security solution. Now, when we talk about SME businesses, they are particularly vulnerable to cyber attacks, all right, as mentioned earlier, such as ransomware, because they don't have or they have not spent the resources on improving their cyber security measure, because they're just starting out. The focus will, of course, be definitely in growing their businesses, things like that. Moving to the cloud would definitely be very advantageous to them because they could improve their overall security, because the cloud vendors have some of the most robust security in the IT space, as we have seen earlier. In fact, some would actually argue and say that moving data to the cloud is more secure than keeping it on site, all right, or tantamount to hosting it yourself, all right. I mean, although there are some IT managers who still prefer to keep the data on site where they have the most perceived control over it. All right. Now, I, for one, would definitely advocate that moving data to the cloud is definitely more secure. All right. Namely because for the reasons that we listed earlier. All right. Substantial investment is actually being invested to improve that infrastructure to give end users like you and I a peace of mind. All right. Now, cloud security is an even bigger issue with GDPR. All right. Now, what is this GDPR? Now, GDPR over here basically refers to the General Data Protection Regulation. And when this became enforceable, it actually has very huge implication, all right, for all organizations over the world. All right. Now, post GDPR, which is right now, organizations have to ensure that their data practices comply to what's outlined in GDPR, all right? Compliance is very important. Although the best way to ensure compliance is through legal counsel, in general, this means that both the cloud vendor and customer, must be in accordance or be in agreement with the data protection practices. All right. So both parties, both players have to be on the same page. For businesses that use multi-cloud solution, I know this can be quite popular lately because they want to tap into all the features that are offered by all these cloud providers. All right. So every solution must also comply, all right, to the GDPR requirement. Okay. Of course, this could get a little bit tricky. So it is something that organizations should strive to stay on top of. All right. Now, cloud security is already affected by the Internet of Things. We hear that term being thrown around. All right. Now, despite all the progress made in securing these cloud solutions, data centers, and infrastructures, all right. Now, we need to know that actually much of this progress could be undone due to the vulnerability that the Internet of Things present. All right. Now, with the exponential growth of IoT devices comes an exponential growth of security vulnerabilities, and that's inevitable. And the primary reason is because, these devices, they often focus on the feature, but they neglect or overlook the aspect of the level of security. All right. And as a result, these IoT devices offer, I would say, a very simple way in to your data, and even cloud solutions, bypassing all the other cybersecurity efforts that have been put in place. One expert predicts that it's going to be so bad that in the next couple of years, it's going to be like a game of, in America, they call it whack-a-mole. All right. It's just mole just appearing, and it's just very easy for you to actually catch all these vulnerabilities as businesses deal with these one-off security breaches. All right. Now, in the next section over here, we're going to be talking about the top 7 advanced cloud security challenges. All right. Now, over here, the first point is we will be expecting to see an increased attack surface. All right. The public cloud environment has become a large and highly attractive attack surface for hackers who exploit poorly secured cloud ingress ports in order to access and disrupt workloads and data in the cloud. All right. And that's why it's very important, especially if you're installing a piece of software solution, it is generally a common practice to change the default port. For example, if you're using MongoDB, the default port would be 27017, and it is generally a good idea to change that port to a different port, all right, so that, basically these malicious hackers can't exploit that vulnerability. All right, so the next point, malware, zero-day account takeover, and many other malicious threats have become a day-to-day reality. All right, so we're not talking about something that is lofty. It is actually happening right now. All right. Yeah. Number 2, it's basically the lack of visibility and tracking. Now, in cloud computing, there is this model called the IaaS, Infrastructure as a Service. And in this kind of model, the cloud providers have full control over the infrastructure layer. and they don't expose it to their customers. All right. So there's a layer of abstraction over there. And the lack of visibility and control is further extended in the PaaS and SaaS cloud models, all right, platform as a service and software as a service, respectively, models. Okay, and cloud customers often cannot effectively identify and quantify their cloud assets or visualize their cloud environments. All right. So it's a problem that all these cloud providers, they are aware as well. And they're also helping organizations with it. All right. There's always a trade-off in between. All right. Then after that, we have the ever-changing workload. All right. And this has become a trend. Cloud assets are provisioned and decommissioned dynamically, both at scale and at velocity. So building on the point earlier where we discussed about scalability, all right? So scalability is happening very rapidly, all right? You just need you're just a few clicks away from being able to scale up or scale down at will, all right? And traditional security tools are simply incapable of enforcing protection policies in such a flexible and dynamic environment with its ever-changing workload. All right, so there is this problem as well. All right, then on the issue of DevOps, DevSecOps, and automation. Now, this, of course, right now, it's a very popular trend. All right, we're talking about DevOps, DevSecOps, and automation in the workplace. And many organizations have actually embraced and adopted this framework, all right, which basically gives them a highly automated DevOps, continuous integration, continuous delivery culture. And they must ensure that appropriate security controls are identified and included in code and templates early in the development cycle. So in other words, in essence, saying that start by planning about the security aspects, all right? And not when you have finished implementing your solution, then only you're thinking of security. No, it has to start from the onset itself, okay? And security-related changes implemented after a workload has been deployed in production can undermine the organization's security posture, as well as lengthen the time for your product to hit the market. All right. And this basically builds on the first point. All right. Start right from the very beginning. Okay. And we have the granular privilege and key management. So often cloud user roles are configured very loosely, okay? Granting extensive privileges, such as the admin right, beyond what is intended or required. And one common example, I was thinking of this, is basically giving database delete or write permissions to untrained users or users who basically have no need to delete or add database assets. Now, this is very risky because in database, when you delete a row of data, the effect is permanent. All right. So that's why it's very important to those database administrators to create a view and share that view to users. All right. Now, at the application level, improperly configured keys and privileges expose sessions to security risks as well. All right. And of course, we have the issue of complex environment. Now, managing security in a consistent way in the hybrid and multi-cloud environment, which is actually pretty common by today's standard, and it's actually favored by enterprises a lot these days. All right, and to manage the security in this kind of environment, it requires, methods and tools that basically could work, could cut across different public cloud providers, private cloud providers, and on-premise deployment. You would basically want a solution that could cut across and help you configure, across these different providers. All right, including branch office edge protection for, geographically different located organizations. All right, so you would want a one-size-fits-all solution. Okay. In cloud compliance and governance, all the leading cloud providers have aligned themselves with the most of the well-known accreditation programs, such as PCI 3.2, NIST 800-53, HIPAA, and of course, GDPR. All right. And of course, customers are the ones who are responsible to ensure that their workload and data processes are compliant. And given the poor visibility and also the dynamics of the cloud environment, the compliance audit becomes very difficult, right? Unless tools are used to achieve, ongoing compliance check and basically would notify or prompt users about misconfigurations. Okay, and it's very common these days when you, all right, if you're trying to disable a certain feature, it will basically give you a warning and providing a recommendation as well. Now, the next part over here, let's look at, what are the best practices then? Okay. And we want to discuss about the pillars of robust cloud security. All right. So the first thing over here is basically granular policy-based and authentication control across complex infrastructure. All right. So work with groups and roles rather than at the individual IAM level to make it easier to update the definitions as the business requirements change. Okay, so that's why if you are working with a Microsoft environment, you need to configure the group policies, and it's very common. All right, grant only the minimal access privileges to assets and APIs that are essential, that are only needed for a group or role to carry out their task. All right. The more extensive privileges would give higher levels of authentication. Okay, and of course, enforce strong password policies, session or permission timeout, in database mentioned earlier, give them views rather than direct access to the data, and so on. All right. Next, zero trust cloud network security. Controls across logically isolated networks and micro segments. All right, so it's good to deploy business critical resources and apps in isolated sections of the provider's cloud network, such as virtual private cloud. All right, if you are using AWS or Google Cloud Platform, or you could use VNet, Azure. All right, so this is basically tantamount to a virtualization in a sense. Use subnets to micro-segment workloads from one another, all right, with very specific security policies implemented or configured at the subnet gateways. Use dedicated wide area network links in hybrid architecture, and could configure static routing configurations to customize access to virtual devices, virtual networks, and the gateways, as well as the public IP addresses. Okay. Enforcement of virtual server protection policies and processes. So cloud security vendors provide robust cloud security posture management, CSPM, all right? Consistently applying governance and compliance rules and templates when providing virtual servers, auditing for configuration deviations, and basically remediating or resolving problems automatically where possible. All right. Enforcement of virtual server protection policies also include, change management and software updates as well. All right. And it's always a good idea, all right, to safeguard applications with a good firewall. And with the firewall over here, you will, or rather the firewall will inspect and control traffic to and fro the web application servers, all right, updates the firewall rules in response to traffic behavior changes, and it will be deployed closer to microservices that are actually running the workloads itself, all right? And in enhanced data protection, we are talking about encryption at all transport layers, all right? Secure file shares and communications, continuous compliance risk management, and maintaining good data storage resource hygiene, such as detecting wrongly configured buckets and terminating orphan resources. Okay. And we have threat intelligence that detects and resolves known and unknown threats in real time. Now, third-party cloud security vendors add the context to the large and diverse streams of cloud-native logs by cross-referencing the log data with internal data such as asset and configuration management systems, vulnerability scanners, and external data such as public threat intelligence feed, geolocation databases, and so on. So the solution basically cross-checks across many different databases, and they provide tools that visualize and query the threat landscape in effort to minimize the response time here. All right, you don't want to be detecting a threat at a much later stage. You want to be instant. All right, and of course, we have to turn to AI, and usually these AI-based anomaly detection algorithms, they are applied to basically flag these new threats, and these new threats would basically undergo forensics analytics, all right, to basically determine their nature, all right, and also their risk profile. Okay, and real-time alerts on intrusions and policy violations shorten times to resolve the problem, sometimes even triggering auto remediation workflows. If you've been seeing a regular pattern too commonly, you could basically define a rule on what's to be done over here. All right, and something that is relatable would definitely be the antivirus, for example. So when the antivirus basically detects an unknown foreign threat, all right, you could configure the action to automatically quarantine the item. So it basically works the same way as well. Okay, and in conclusion over here, we cannot run away and we cannot deny that cloud computing is definitely the future. All right, and I think to do more justice, we're going to see even more rampant cloud computing happening in the future. All right, there is no doubt about that. And for sure, cybersecurity will continue to be very critical element. All right, and everyone will definitely agree on that too. All right, now when taken together, we can see how cloud security is the next evolution in IT. It is already a new trend and it's going to keep trending. And As the volume of data increases along with the risk and regulations like GDPR, so these would make security enforceable, while emerging IoT technologies, they will undo it. All right, unless these vendors actually factor this into their design phase. All right, and therefore we should stay on top of the cloud security by staying informed. All right, ensuring that you or your staff, they are educated, and continue to actually have a healthy level of distrust. All right, and I mean, distrust over here, what we're saying over here is that, trust, but it is good to actually verify. Okay, so I think my time is up. All right, thank you so much, all right, for your attention. Okay, and I'll be taking some questions over here before handing it back to Camilla. All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Okay, so there are a couple of questions here. Would you be able to address them?
Yes, let me just take a look at the question. Just give me a minute. All right, let me just first take the question over here. Okay, so over here, we need to understand that first question over here, cloud security is better than on-premise hosting. Now, in the long run, all right, companies would definitely be moving their infrastructure, onto the cloud. All right, because number one, it's due to cost of our own hosting. You would have to actively upgrade your infrastructure, and you have to actively keep abreast with the cybersecurity measures in order to define new policies, things like that. And if you want to stay ahead of the curve, it can actually be very costly. And that is why I say that cloud computing will definitely be inevitable in the future. And when all your data or all your applications are moved over to the cloud, so it is very important to adopt these cloud, or rather good cloud security practices. Okay, so what are the possible cloud security defensive ideas? So number one, it's definitely, I think it was mentioned in the slide deck as well. We're talking about two examples that I can think of. All right, number one, it's definitely something that is simple, but it's often overlooked. It's to change the default port to a program. All right, that is generally a good idea. And with continuing from that point, it would be to basically scan for open ports in your network and basically verify, if there's any open port that is left unused. It's generally a good idea to basically close that port. All right, and if you're dealing with database, naturally over here, it would be as a database administrator. If you are the database administrator, you should be the one who have the final right, in making changes. All right, you should not be sharing access with or granting access to another user. So it's actually very common to actually just share the view with another person, and they can just explore that view. All right, in the event where that view is messed up, all right, some data is deleted, things like that, it is not going to affect your original stored data. All right, so there is that. Okay. Okay. So maybe over here, I'll just take one more question. What are the security considerations for serverless computation in the cloud? All right, is it at the SaaS or PaaS level? All right, so security considerations for serverless computation. Now, for these over here, so the key point is we're talking about serverless computation. All right. And basically over here, we're talking about configurations at the PaaS level, platform as a service. All right. And basically, all these computations will be handled by the backend. All right. And so it's basically you need to basically log into the dashboard of the PaaS. All right. And basically just tweak or configure your, what do you call that, security features from them. All right. Yeah. So, all right. Okay. Maybe one last question over here. Right, it's actually a lot. Okay, do the instructors also recommend software or hardware automated tools to help detect and remedy vulnerabilities discovered in attendees' respective? This is a quite long question. Okay, so last question over here to answer this. Again, over here, right now, we are in the era of automation. All right, and we basically have third-party solutions that basically scan for vulnerabilities. Again, over here, you might not even need to turn to these third-party solutions. Work with your cloud providers and see, what are the existing solutions that, they might already have in place. All right, just that maybe we're just not aware of it. All right, and basically, if it's something that is released by them, the compatibility would definitely be there. All right, so work closely with your cloud service providers over here, right? So I think yeah, my time is definitely up. I think took a little bit longer. Thank you very much, all right, for your questions.